to get at America. And an easy way, quite frankly, is through an EMP attack, an electromagnetic pulse attack.
Consider every major city in America, how does it get its water supply? Consider that every major city in America, its average food supply on hand is 21 to 28 days. Consider, where do we get our medication? Consider what happens in nursing homes and hospitals. What happens to our transportation grid? Anything driven that, well, most of them have computers in them, they're all gone.
An electromagnetic pulse that can cripple everything from stoplights to computers to the defense grid.
An electromagnetic pulse attack, also known as an EMP, could be devastating. It could easily damage the country's critical infrastructure, especially the electrical grid.
If a terrorist organization or North Korea or Iran detonated just a single nuclear weapon at high altitude over the United States, it would destroy the electric grid and our critical infrastructures and put at risk the lives of up to 90% of the American people. We all depend directly or indirectly. We all live directly or indirectly off of electricity. We're an electronic civilization.
And this is why, despite being a superpower, we have a grid that is comparable to a third world country, and that's not right.
Let me repeat that, 90% of all Americans will die within 12 to 18 months after an EMP event. This study was done in 2008. Has anything been done since? No.
If it sounds far-fetched, consider that last July, a steamer owned by Iran's ally, North Korea, was found in Panama hiding nuclear-capable SA-2 missiles under 10,000 tons of sugar. Experts believe Russia has given EMP technology to North Korea.
In our highly connected, just-in-time, efficient technological civilization, to cause chaos that could cause tens of millions of Americans to die before it's sorted out.
Tens of millions?
Tens of millions. Because if you have no electric power for 6 months to a year, you have no food delivery, you have no gasoline, you have no water. You think about that, it's pretty bad.
Well, that's a horrifying possibility. How are we protecting against that happening?
We're not.
Today, the old duck and cover films from Cold War days seem campy and quaint. To many, a nuclear blast and its resultant electromagnetic pulse, or EMP, seems so unimaginable, so unlikely, that few worry about it, and fewer still take any precautions.
It's not real, and it's something out of a James Bond movie. A general consensus is that it is not a real threat. It's not imminent by any stretch of the imagination.
We have information, for example, the data from actual high-altitude nuclear detonations that were conducted by us and the Russians back in the 1961-62 time frame that did things like knock the lights out in Hawaii.
An EMP is a short burst of electromagnetic energy that all nuclear explosions produce to varying degrees. A large EMP triggered over the United States from an orbiting nuke at the right altitude could fry the circuitry of cell phones, render electronic banking, automobile computers, railways, air traffic control, and airplanes themselves useless. Food would rot in refrigerators and in farm fields, with no means of transporting agri-products to population centers. In the following weeks and months, a truly Mad Max world would evolve. Dr. Pry believes a naivete about EMP pervades the Western democracies, where nukes are kept mostly out of sight and out of mind.
But for totalitarian and authoritarian states, as in the case of Iran, and possibly North Korea, the use of nuclear weapons is not only thinkable, but in their open source military doctrine. They've written for years about being able to win a nuclear war, that you can fight a nuclear war.
Adding to EMP worries, North Korea's recent successful test of a solid-fueled ballistic missile. The solid fuel needs less preparation, meaning less warning time for those targeted. In addition, North Korea also has at least 2 observation satellites that orbit over the U.S. at an altitude ideal for an EMP attack.
For years, the Iranians have been taking a container ship out into the middle of the Caspian Sea and firing rockets straight up. And then they detonate the rocket and say, oh, it was a failure, didn't go into orbit. I mean, that is the signature. That is a clear signature of training for an EMP launch. Put the missile straight up.
But now Iran and North Korea have a new deal to team up on science and technology, and that's raising serious concerns.
Now, Iranian media reports that Iran and North Korea have signed a new deal, and it came with a tweak to the West. Iran's supreme leader quoted as saying the two countries have common enemies since the arrogant powers cannot bear independent governments. The Iranians say they'll work with North Korea on scientific and technological projects. Iran has consistently denied that it's pursuing nuclear weapons, but recent reports say there's another indication that a weaponization program is moving ahead. The reemergence of a mysterious scientist named Mohsen Fakhrizadeh. The Wall Street Journal, which first reported this story, says he's Iran's version of Robert Oppenheimer, the physicist who headed America's push for a nuclear bomb in the 1940s. Experts say Fakhrizadeh drew into the shadows after some of his funding was cut a few years ago. But according to an IAEA report, he now runs a facility north of Tehran, engaging in activities that, quote, would be highly relevant to a nuclear weapon program. There are no photos of Fakhrizadeh readily available.
If someone exploded a high-altitude nuclear weapon over the United States, the electromagnetic pulse would affect all the electronics within line of sight of that burst.
Were the blast to occur high enough, the entire continental United States would be left with no electric power or the things that depend on electric power.
Medical services wouldn't be available because they needed electric power. Telephones wouldn't work. The traffic lights would stop working. Big traffic jam. Transportation would be shut down. Electronic funds transfer wouldn't work, so you wouldn't get your paycheck. You wouldn't be able to use your credit card. Food stocks would run out very quickly. Everything we know about life today that makes it convenient and efficient would be shut down. The day after an EMP attack, the configuration of the country would be more like that around 1800. The problem is that the country had a very small population at that time compared to the 300 million people who live here today. There would be a real challenge to keeping our population even alive, much less strong and viable after a high-altitude EMP event.
6-4, Mike, affirmative. Left turn on 7.